If you want to help out and support the channel, there are a few things you can do. Go check out Flipside Gaming and use the promo code VOIDMAGE in all caps. This will get you 10% off all orders $10 or more. And if you go shopping on tcgplayer.com, go use my affiliate link in the description below. That way all purchases you make will go towards helping the channel. And lastly, go check out my Patreon. It's a more direct way that you can help the channel while also getting some more interaction. I appreciate all of your support. If you haven't already, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Hello everyone, welcome back to another Commander Deck Tech video. Another new patron requested deck tech, this time for new patron Pulsating Kiwi. Pulsating Kiwi wanted to see if I could optimize and significantly improve a Tuvasa the Sunlit build. He seems to have the right idea here. He wanted to stay away from artifacts, which I can understand if you want to make this a more enchantment focused deck. Makes it easier to fool around with some of the Enchantress themes, and you're just overall able to benefit off of Tuvasa. She is 3 mana in Bant for a 1/1 legendary Merfolk Shaman. She gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control, and whenever you cast your first enchantment spell each turn, you draw a card. I'm going to try my best to optimize the deck, and if you want to see the entire deck list, I will have it linked. It's on tcgplayer.com. It's a good thing that we have card draw on a commander. Usually when you can get card draw on your commander, it's going to make your deck a lot easier to play. I know that's kind of a Captain Obvious thing to say, but when you're flirting with things like Voltron, it's not always the easiest thing to get more card draw. So the fact that we get one off of Tuvasa is pretty good. Pulsating Kiwi wanted this to be a combo deck, so I am going to include a few combos for the deck. Nothing that I think can go infinite, but we have some pretty interesting interactions. And obviously since Tuvasa can get pretty big, we're going to go for commander damage. Starting it off here with the lands, we want to play some pretty expensive ones, and I typically like to go with dual lands if I want to play more competitively and I'm playing more than 2 colors. Mana fixing is so important, so you're going to see other cards like City of Brass, Exotic Orchard. Don't always see these in 3-color decks, but it's so important to get whatever mana we need turn 1. And since we are playing a lot of enchantments, one of the best lands you can consider for a deck like this is Serra's Sanctum. Pretty much Gaia's Cradle for enchantments, but instead of green mana, it provides you with white. Other noteworthy cards, if we're going to talk more about utility, we have Reliquary Tower. The goal is to draw a bunch of cards. We don't want to have to end up discarding any. There's also a High Market, and the only reason why we're playing High Market is for a card I'm going to mention later in the video, but trust me, it is worth it. And Hall of Heliod's Generosity, one of the newer cards in the deck, making it very easy to get whatever you lose back from your graveyard. And since this is going to be somewhat of a Voltron deck, can't really go without a Rogue's Passage. Tuvasa doesn't have any built-in evasion, so if you can give it to her, the better off you'll be. Now we are kind of hindered here because the request is to go without artifacts, so doing my best, I'm going to fall back on more enchantments to get mana. Carpet of Flowers is an all-star in really any deck in Commander. A bunch of people play islands. You're going to provide yourself with more mana while also making it easier to trigger Tuvasa because it's just a 1-mana enchantment. We of course have the land auras like Utopia Sprawl, Wild Growth, Fertile Ground, and Overgrowth. These will help us get extra mana while also synergizing with the enchantment theme of the deck. We have some other enchantments that will help us out if we can get our card draw going. Both Burgeoning and Exploration are pretty good. They're both enchantments that will trigger Tuvasa and our other enchantresses that are going to draw us cards. And the more cards we draw, the more lands we're going to get. Burgeoning especially, if we're not going to be playing the artifact ramp that you can play in a more competitive deck, you definitely need these. And there was no mention of keeping out mana dorks, so we have Arbor Elf, Birds of Paradise, and Noble Hierarch. We're not going to go crazy with the creature ramp, but we just want some really good ones. Both Birds of Paradise and Noble Hierarch are going to give us whatever mana we need. Noble Hierarch can also give our commander +1/+1 if she attacks alone. And the Arbor Elf is pretty underrated because we can untap a forest. If that forest has one of those auras on it that can provide you with more mana, then you're going to untap even more mana with Arbor Elf. So that's a pretty neat interaction. But other than that, we just have cost reduction for our enchantments. The new Starfield Mystic and Herald of the Pantheon are pretty good ways that we can make our enchantments even cheaper. If you can make your enchantments cheaper, it's going to make your card draw engine a lot better. And let's just get right into the card draw engine. We have a bunch of Enchantress cards. These are cards that trigger whenever you cast an enchantment spell, or pretty much anything to that effect. But Enchantress's presence, whenever you cast one, you draw a card. And we're just going to have a bunch of creatures that do the same thing. Our Gothian Enchantress is really good because she also has Shroud. So if your opponents have a Walking Ballista and they want to ping her off, they can't. Core Spirit Dancer is whenever you cast an aura spell, but it's definitely worth it because we play a bunch of them. She can also get pretty big herself, so you don't just have to rely on Tuvasa. Mesa Enchantress is pretty much the simplest version of this. You're just going to draw for casting an enchantment. The same thing with the newer card Satyr Enchanter from last year's core set, and Verduran Enchantress. Getting multiple of these creatures out there with Tuvasa is ideal, so whenever you cast an enchantment, you're going to be drawing a few cards instead of just one. And Eidolon of Blossoms is awesome because it triggers for itself when it enters the battlefield, but it also triggers for other enchantments entering the battlefield too, which is a completely different trigger, so if you're bringing enchantments back from the graveyard to the battlefield, it'll trigger it too. So that is just a ton of awesome card draw, but we have even more in enchantment form, like Mystic Remora. The beauty of 1 mana enchantments is that you can easily trigger all of those enchantresses, but Mystic Remora can draw you even more. Most spells in the game are going to be non-creature spells, so you're going to draw a bunch. Sylvan Library is a staple, and the more competitive you play, the more willing you are to give up life if it means you get more cards. Rhystic Study is like the Mystic Remora card, but it counts for every spell your opponents play, and not just non-creature spells. And similarly, even though it's not card draw, we also have Smothering Tithe. We have these enchantments that can tax our opponents. If they don't pay the tax, we get a bunch of advantage. Now, we are going to be a pretty linear deck. If we're not dealing that commander damage, it's kind of hard for us to win, so we want to at least survive. And we have some enchantments that are going to kind of act as a pillow fort for us. Blind Obedience is going to make artifacts and creatures our opponents control enter tapped, so you're at least slowing them down. We have Greater Auramancy. Other enchantments we control have Shroud, and enchanted creatures we control also have Shroud, making it harder for our opponents to get rid of our board. Sterling Grove is pretty much the same thing minus the creatures, and we can also sacrifice it to search for an enchantment card, so all around it's just a great utility card to have in the deck. We also have Aura of Silence, not necessarily going to protect us much, but we can slow our opponents down. Yet another one of those tax cards. We have Karmic Justice, which can punish an opponent for destroying our non-creature permanents. And there is, of course, Ghostly Prison, Propaganda, and Sphere of Safety. Having multiples of these out can get out of hand, can force your opponents to have to deal with these first before they can even touch you. And what's even better is that you can copy them with things like Estrid's Invocation and Mirror Maid. And similar to the effect of Greater Auramancy and Sterling Grove, we have Privileged Position. This is arguably one of the best cards in the whole deck because other permanents we control have hexproof, which is better than Shroud because it means you can still put auras on Tuvasa. I don't really feel comfortable just playing one counterspell in a deck. I'd rather just not play any at all. Pact of Negation isn't a bad one to go with, because if it's your turn and you don't have that much mana to invest in, you can easily just pay 0 here to counter a spell. That way you can save up the mana for the other spells you want to win the game with. Something that's also pretty important is Teferi's Protection. You can just stop your opponents from board wiping, or heaven forbid they have a way to get rid of all enchantments. Teferi's Protection is going to help you keep all of them. Now, let's talk about some ways that we can deal even more damage with Tuvasa. We have cards like Ethereal Armor, pretty much what Tuvasa already does, but you also get First Strike. One of the better cards in the deck if you want to deal commander damage easily. Rancor is also a really good card because you're not just giving her +2 power, but you're also giving her trample. Can also be a reliable way of getting even more card draw later in the game, since Rancor has the habit of returning to your hand. And similar to Ethereal Armor, Ancestral Mask is just disgusting. Not only does it count your enchantments, but it counts all of them. So +2/+2 for each of them. In addition to Tuvasa, you should be able to easily deal commander damage. Armadillo Cloak is a pretty good enchantment. In addition to +2/+2 and trample, you're also going to get life gain. And keywords are very important. If you can keep adding more power, you want to have some kind of evasion or some life gain. We have Shield of the Oversoul and Steel of the Godhead. Really love both of these because Shield of the Oversoul can make our Tuvasa indestructible and give her flying. We also have Steel of the Godhead, giving her lifelink and making her unblockable. Really ideal if you just want to get in the commander damage. You're going to need flying. Even better if you can make her unblockable. Another way to make her unblockable is with Unquestioned Authority. Enters the battlefield, lets you draw a card, which is really nice, but she's going to have protection from creatures, meaning you can just swing it uncontested. We're also playing Estrid the Masked, which is really nice if we only have one creature that's enchanted. We want to be able to block with it, but she's also really important if we want to give totem armor to our Tuvasa, making it harder for our opponents to board wipe or just get rid of Tuvasa in some kind of way that would normally destroy her. And her ult is ridiculous if you can get all those cards into your graveyard and bring them all back. And it's very important to have some kind of recovery in this deck, because as I mentioned, if your opponents have any way of just destroying all enchantments, you're kind of screwed. Starfield of Nyx is a pretty good card to have late game because each one of our upkeeps we get to bring back an enchantment from our graveyard to the battlefield. It's also nice if we have a bunch of enchantments because we can make them creatures, and suddenly we don't have to prioritize commander damage anymore because our creatures are probably going to help us out a bit in combat. As we get more competitive in commander, I also like playing Regrowth in addition to Eternal Witness. Just gets the card back to your hand, so if you want to recast an enchantment, you can draw more cards off of your enchantresses. And probably the granddaddy of all recursion spells in the deck is Replenish. You just return all enchantment cards from your graveyard to play. Now, if we're talking about removal, we want to try to keep it in enchantment form. Like everything else in the deck, if you can just keep benefiting off your card draw engine, you're just going to keep filling up your hand. I mentioned Aura of Silence if you want to get rid of artifacts and enchantments, but we also have Song of the Dryads. You can pretty much turn anything you want into a forest. Other than that, we're not going to go too crazy. There's also Swords to Plowshares and the amazing Cyclonic Rift. And there is a bit more removal, but we're going to be talking about that next with some combos. And it wouldn't be an enchantment combo deck if we didn't have Academy Rector. When it's put into the graveyard from play, we exile it, and we get to search our library for an enchantment card and put it into play. Now, there are plenty of targets in the deck. After all, we're playing 35 enchantments, but probably one of the best ones is Omniscience, allowing us to cast spells from our hand without paying their mana cost. Combine this with our enchantresses, and we have a way to just play spells for free and continue to draw cards. Hopefully, we can keep that going. I originally wanted to put Laboratory Maniac in here because of that. I just didn't see it as viable. You're still going to be able to play a bunch of cards and have a massive board after you play Omniscience. So while it's not an infinite combo with anything else, it's just a really nice interaction to have with our enchantresses. We have some other combos in the deck, but that's going to be with the card Enchanted Evening. All permanents are enchantments in addition to their other types. Basically the Mycosynth lattice of enchantments. You already know where we're going here. If you have an Aura Thief, similarly to Academy Rector, you can sacrifice it, which by the way, that's the whole reason why we have High Market. Not a lot of ways that we can sacrifice our creatures other than that, but getting rid of this card, we can just steal all of our opponent's stuff because their stuff is going to be enchantments with Enchanted Evening. And if we want to, we can take advantage of the fact that all of our opponent's cards are going to be enchantments. We have Cleansing Meditation and Calming Verse. Hopefully we have Threshold for Cleansing Meditation. If we get both of these off, we could pretty much end up with our opponents having an empty board, and we have everything we had before. And those are pretty much the combos. This isn't going to be anything super crazy like a turn 3 or 4 win, but it's not super difficult to get those combos off. We are playing some tutors, like Enlightened Tutor, Idyllic Tutor, just to get the enchantments that we really need. And Eladamri's Call is really awesome if we need Academy Rector or Aura Thief. But yeah, that's pretty much the deck. I enjoyed making this one for you, Pulsating Kiwi. Thanks for becoming a new patron. Again, if you want to see everything, the links to the deck list will be in the description below. You all have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next video. Just wanted to say thanks to the patrons who are supporting me on patreon.com. Go check it out. There are different tiers with their own rewards. One of them is having your name in the credits of my videos. I know it's not much, but it's something that I can do to show my appreciation. Thanks again, and have a good day.